I know that when I got diagnosed, I was keen to hear about others' experience and their journey, how they got diagnosed. I guess the processes they went through and their experiences. So I kind of figured it'd be helpful just maybe for others who are going through that process as well, or are thinking about sort of going to the doctors. This might be helpful for you. I initially sort of put off going to the doctors. I was assuming my issues that I was experiencing, which just sort of felt like memory problems, I initially just put them down to stress. And I kind of thought the doctors would put it down to stress as well, so I thought, oh, what's the point of going? Anyway, my partner was encouraging me to keep going, so I eventually went. I went to a doctor and they did a very short little cognitive test. They noticed that didn't score so well on that, so they took some blood samples and referred me to a memory and dementia kind of assessment team. And I didn't hear anything from them. Didn't hear anything from the doctor again. Didn't hear anything from the assessment team. So I did contact the doctor's clinic again, and they said, oh yeah, I can see that the doctors received an email from the assessment team, and it's saying that your patient lives outside our catchment area. You'll have to refer him to somewhere else. So I said, okay, cool, can you do that? Anyway, I never heard anything back from those doctors, and I contacted them on 2 more occasions after that, trying to follow up with that. So that was my introduction to it all, and I kind of felt at the time thinking, God, this is, and so I guess looking back now, I should say, Alzheimer's, probably like the last population group you should be relying on to to follow up with these things. Anyway, I guess part of the issue though was that I was moving from suburbia out into the countryside at the time. And so I ended up going to my now local doctor in the countryside and going through the same process. I had that short little cognitive test, and yeah, there's like some problems there. And then that doctor then referred me to the local, and I should remember the name of this because I've said it 1,000 times, cognitive dementia and memory service. I think that's a woohoo. I think I got that right. A woohoo. Okay. She referred me to the memory sort of service, and she said it would take about 3 months. 6 months passed, and I decided just to contact them directly. So, and that was fortunate that I knew who she actually referred me to, so I could do that. That was handy. I ended up, anyway, I ended up at least I'm in a pretty environment. You can look at that while I have my pauses. Although I think it's probably all blurred in the background, you can't see it. Yeah, I contacted them and they sounded kind of apologetic, as though I might have, fallen through the cracks a bit. And they might have sort of, probably not, anyway. Again, I feel like another opportunity where it was up to the patient to make the effort to try and follow up with appointments that you're supposed to have, that were supposed to be made, for you. And I know I'm whinging, and I also know that I'm just super lucky that I've even can see a cognitive dementia and memory service. So I know that people will be watching this going, "Oh, just shut up! You're bloody lucky." So I understand it, and I agree. Anyway, but so you know how I said before, I said it's taken me 20 times to make these videos? It's because half the time, something just happens in the environment. Right now, I've got council workers here who are mowing the grass up there, and it's the first time I've ever seen them here. It happened to be right when I come to do it now. Anyway, but when I saw this cognitive dementia and memory service, bang, got it. I was really impressed with how efficient they were. I had to wait 2 months before I could see them, but when I saw them, I was really blown away by that service. They were really impressive. I didn't. What was I going to say? That's right. So there was 3 sessions that I had with them, and the first was with like a nurse. It was a nurse, some sort of specialised nurse, I guess, and maybe went for an hour, and she done the cognitive test in that as well. Not as short as the doctor's one in your normal doctors, but still, maybe it went for 15 minutes or something. I can't remember, but it was shorter. And I remember that day though I was feeling not as sharp. Just cognitively, I wasn't feeling very sharp. And so I was a little bit upset because I was like, I want them to just get an accurate measure of my cognitive abilities. Anyway, I didn't perform very well. And they take your history and they ask you questions about your symptoms, etc., etc. I was really interesting with that. I find it very difficult to report on your symptoms. It's not easy to report on memory and cognition issues. Because everyone experiences memory and cognition issues, and so it's just easy it's difficult to go, I don't know if that's an example of this as being particularly bad or, so it was more just a matter of the extent of them occurring frequently and how that has increased for me, I guess, over recent years. But difficult giving accurate information, because I remember I told them when they asked me, how long have you had these symptoms for? And I was like, I think it's probably about 4 years, I'd say. It's been a long time. Later on, my partner's gone to me, going, Fraser, it definitely wasn't 4 years. Much shorter than that, something much more recent than that. Anyway, she's very vigilant with sending me text messages. And so just in everyday life, if we're talking about a topic, if something's important, even when it's not that important, she'll text me, and she's always been that way. But it proved really handy right now, because then we could actually look through the history of the text messages, and we could identify, that's the first time she mentioned anything about my memory concerns or any memory issues was 2 years ago. And so that was really helpful. So if you are experiencing symptoms and etc., send a text message and talk about it there, because you just will forget timelines, I suspect, if you're like me anyway. All right, so I didn't perform too well with the nurse, so then that was like a screening phase, I guess. Then she said, okay, I want you to see a geriatrician. And I was able to see a geriatrician 2 days later with them. A little bit funny. I always rely on my calendar. So on my phone, always rely on it. But I was 100% certain that this appointment started at 9:30. So I didn't even check my calendar that day. Anyway, I stuffed up. I got there at 9:30. I got there like an hour and a half or something too early. I thought it was kind of funny that I forgot the time of my memory assessment. The memory assessment was, again, another cognitive test, and this one went for a lot longer. I don't know, I'm going to make up a number here. Felt maybe half an hour it went for, just the cognitive test part. She also tests other, being able to move, those sort of, all different things. With the geriatrician, I was happy with the geriatrician because I felt like on that day, I felt really quite sharp. And I thought, that's as good as I can do. I still didn't do very well in the testing though. But yeah, the geriatrician identified you've got some issues with your memory, and I'd like you to see a neuropsychologist. And also, I want you to get some brain scans done, blood work done, urine, I can't remember if there's other things, to be honest, I had to do. I think that was it though. So then I went and did the brain scans. The brain scans were interesting. I've never done anything like that before. I think with the PET scan, they inject something into you that they can then see in the scan how your brain metabolizes glucose. And so they can see, I guess, the functioning of your brain. And the MRI, I think, was like just a big loud one that you laid in for ages. I can't remember which one of those scans it was though, and this is again me having a little whinge, but I turned up and the lady doing the scan, you could see she was in a hurry, she was busy, and she was very frustrated. She looks at the sort of the referral and looked at me and just goes, "What are you here for? You're too young for this." Like grumpy with me for turning up, getting a scan done that the doctors told me to come to do. That was, I think, the only time though I feel like I've experienced so far somebody saying, and I guess using the stereotype of "you're too young for this." Maybe people think that, I guess, but they don't probably say it. Anyway, she was grumpy that day, and maybe so, let her guard down a bit. Let her, her filter system. You know what I'm trying to say. Anyway, so I got those scans done, and did the whole blood and urine stuff, and then it came to seeing a neuropsychologist. And the neuropsychologist did a really long cognitive test. It went for, I don't know, I'm going to say 3 hours. I can't remember now, maybe 2 hours. I don't know. It felt like a really, really long time though. And you had to do all these different tasks. And I could feel that I wasn't performing too well. And like she would read out a whole list of words, a really long list of words, and I didn't remember like 4 or 5 words, and she repeated that process throughout at different stages, and I was like, I don't even remember how I remember words I remembered at the end, the last sort of attempt of it. But some tasks I felt like I performed really well with. I think that's easy, yep, no worries. And some tasks I felt like I really struggled with. I was just really mindful in that not to let my confidence kind of affect my performance. Like if I knew that or if I felt like I performed really bad, I didn't want to then have that carry over and then my performance be affected just because I'm lacking confidence. So I just try to stay optimistic and positive throughout the whole thing. Again, I was just so concerned of just making sure that they had a really accurate measure of me, give them the best information possible so they can make an accurate conclusion about what's really going on. Anyway, so I think like just a couple of days or so after having that neuropsych assessment, where I was sort of walking away from that feeling a bit like I didn't do so well, they're definitely going to identify issues, I received an SMS from the radiology, and in there it was just, here's some images of the PET scan and the MRI. And of course, I'm kind of curious. I'm Googling what's the normal brain look like and comparing the images. No clue what I'm doing, but it just shows how it is playing on your mind. It shows that you are still concerned. Anyway, about 4 or 5 days after receiving those images, I was kind of curious. I was going back to those SMS, the links on there again. I had a little look. And I noticed that they actually uploaded reports now. And I opened up their MRI report and it said, nothing abnormal, everything looks clean. And then I opened up the PET scan report. And I was in my bedroom at the time, and I remember just reading in that PET scan report, it said there were areas in my brain with low glucose uptake, and that the most likely explanation was Alzheimer's. And I completely freaked out. I was hysterically crying. I almost couldn't breathe. It was just, I've never been like that before, where it was just, my my body just took over, and I couldn't control myself. I ended up just calling my brother straight away. It's funny, my big brother, you know, he's like the smart one in the family and the one who no disrespect to my other siblings, but he's the biggest, he's the oldest, and he always seems to have, always seems to have the answers, you know. I guess he'll always be my big brother. But I called him, and he's also a paramedic too, so I sort of felt like, you know, you might, not that he's knowing about this stuff, but you know, he's still in healthcare in the degree. And he was good because he just calmed me down. He goes, look, you're just going to have to wait. Obviously the MRI didn't show anything. You're just going to have to wait till you have your final meeting with the assessment team where they can pull together all of the test results and help, you know, and make sense of it all. So I didn't have a last meeting booked in already. They usually just book you in after each meeting, but they didn't have one booked. And I think it was because they were waiting for the test, for the brain scan reports and stuff. And because when I contacted them, I said, look, I just received these reports, and they've gone, oh, we haven't received them. So I think the radiology provider stuffed up. I think they've sent those reports to the patient and not the doctors. I assume that's what's happened there. Either way, it's looking back now, not the best thing you do to send someone a report saying they're, you know, most likely Alzheimer's, and there's no one to talk to and no making sense of it all. You're just left there going, holy shit. But anyway, so they said, okay, well, I actually just emailed them the reports, the assessment team, emailed them the brain scan reports so they could have them, and then they booked me in to see them at that time in 6 weeks' time. So I then had 6 weeks to wait for that final appointment, and some of those weeks I just could not get it out of my head about these damn brain scan reports. I'm a researcher, and so I was like, okay, let's go have a look at the academic literature and see how reliable are these scans at detecting Alzheimer's. And you know, which one's most likely to be accurate, the MRI, the PET scan, you know. So, and I was doing that at like sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning kind of stuff when I just couldn't stop thinking about it. This is a bit of a side topic, but one of the things I've noticed is that you get very selfish with all this. You know, through this whole process, you kind of get selfish because you're thinking about me, you're thinking about yourself, you know, a lot. Like I was thinking about me at 3 o'clock in the morning looking at brain scans, you know. But you're getting all this done. You're going through these sessions with the doctors. They're to the side. You know, you've still got your life going on while you're doing all this. You know, I'm still working, and I've got kids, and you know, you still got responsibilities that you're doing, and so I feel like when you talk about a topic like this, it's easy to start thinking, oh yes, it's all about that. At that time in your life, you're doing this, you're getting diagnosed. It's not like that. It's what's going on in the back. It's almost what's going on in the background. And so when you get given information like that, it does screw with your head a bit because you haven't got the time, headspace to put it to the side and think about it. And anyway, I then saw okay, that's right. It then again comes to the day of my final meeting where they go through all the test results and I guess give you a diagnosis or say what the next steps is or whatever, all right? It happened to be on my daughter's 16th birthday. So I spent the morning with her. I dropped her off at school late, bad parent. She didn't know anything about what was going on. I'd never told them about me going to that appointment or anything like that. I didn't tell them about my diagnosis till a few months later. I turned up with my partner and my brother, and there's a geriatrician and I think the nurse I can't remember, someone else. The geriatrician starts just going through the cognitive testing. And in the cognitive testing, she starts saying there's different, I guess, domains of cognition, like working memory, attention, language, etc., etc. I can't remember them now. Executive functioning was another one. She went through all these different domains, and some domains were fine. She was like, yep, no worries. And then other areas had, I think I can't remember what the word she said, but something like mild impairment. And at the time, I remember thinking, what's wrong with that? That doesn't sound too bad. I probably kind of suck on these tests anyway, you know. That doesn't sound too bad. It's probably doesn't sound like I get Alzheimer's or dementia or anything. You know, this is quite good. But I was also really confused because I was thinking I'm struggling in life. It's not easy. What I'm going like, it doesn't feel like life's that bloody easy when it comes to certain tasks and things I've got to do. Why am I struggling so much? And while I was thinking all that, my partner, who I later talked to about this later on, said, well, she looked at me and she looked like I was getting my hopes up and looked like I was feeling quite confident. And I think part of the issue there was I think I was interpreting those test scores as though this is, I think I was interpreting those test scores as though I was slightly worse than average. And looking back now, I don't think that's how you should interpret it. I think it may be, and I could be completely wrong here, so don't take my word for it, but the way I'm looking at it now is that, no, there's a normal range. Some people are on average, some people are better than average, some are worse than average. There's a normal range, but then you start getting to the more of the extremes, and some people are great and some people are bad. And there's probably something unusual going on there. And so I think that's the issue, is that there's something unusual going in certain areas of my cognition, which I know was working memory and language, and there was other ones too, which I can't remember which ones were problematic, and other areas were all fine. I then felt like the geriatrician might have picked up on my body language and feeling like I'm feeling quite positive, and given that my partner sort of saw me looking that way as well. And then I felt like her tone changed. She was always very factual throughout the whole thing, and maybe it's in my head. I'd love to hear what her reflection was anyway, but I felt like her tone changed and it just became a bit more somber. And then she went through the brain scan results. And this hit me. She said that there were certain areas of my brain with low glucose uptake. And she said something, and I'm not sure how certain she was with this, or how definitive she was with this statement. But she kind of just said, look, the areas of your brain that lit up in the PET scan are responsible for those tasks that you struggled with in the cognitive testing. So for example, like language, that was identified as a problem, began to recall words, sort of things like that. And that area of my brain that's responsible for language was sort of identified as being problematic. So I think that it mapped onto and so for me, it felt very like cause and effect, and just like, holy shit. I was really, not feeling optimistic then when I heard her say that. I can't remember what happened after that bit. Again, I'm very glad that I've made recordings of this almost immediately after I got diagnosed, because I could look back on that and say, oh, that's right. Do that if you can. If you're going to have, if you're concerned about your memory and stuff, I reckon that's actually a good thing. These recordings are good. These recordings are very good, because at least you can look back at it and go, oh, that's what the actual process was, because you will forget it. And maybe you don't want to look back on the process, and maybe you want to ignore it, and that's fine. But maybe someday you might want to look back on it. I didn't think I'd want to look back on that video about the process, but anyway. So she was saying things like, you've got extreme alert. She was saying that throughout it as well. And for me, I just thought, okay, well, it's obviously not conclusive what you know. It's just, your best estimate. And then she said, you have young onset Alzheimer's disease. And I remember just having my hand over my mouth and my tears just welling up. I wasn't overly emotional, but again, it just felt like the gravity of the situation, I could just feel it again. And I remember saying, "Are you sure?" And I remember the look in her eyes, just going like, very somber and just like, yes. Then I don't remember the details after that. I just remember my partner and my brother then just asking heaps of questions. They were all legal and financial questions. I kind of wasn't paying much attention. And I remember looking across at them though and just feeling like they were fighting for me. You know, they were concerned, they were worried, they were trying to protect me. And it wasn't that the doctor was the enemy, and it wasn't that she was doing anything bad, but they were just trying to make sure that I was going to be safe, and they were just concerned about what it all meant for me, for my future, I guess. I remember looking across at them though. I can still picture it now. I remember looking across and just feeling like I am loved. They love me. They're fighting for me. And no matter what happens, I'll be fine. I've got people in my life who love me. They care enough about me. So that made a crappy situation not so bad. I still get emotional talking about this stuff a bit. And I know that I'm going to forget a lot of shit. I know that, you know, as the disease progresses, I'm going to lose more and more of my memory with things. I just hope I never forget that. I never forget the image of them fighting for me.
Daybreak, I'm already miles away, and there's nothing left